Dear you, you didn't wake up one morning and decide to feel exhausted. It arrived quietly, disguised as normal. You kept going, kept responding, kept doing what the day asked of you. From the outside, nothing looked different. From the inside, something felt thinner than it used to be. You noticed it in how your reactions softened. Not calmer, just muted. Things that once stirred you now passed without much effect. You still cared, but the caring required more effort. You still listened, but listening felt heavier. It wasn't sadness, exactly. It wasn't anger. It was a kind of emotional fatigue that made everything feel slightly farther away. You told yourself this was just life. You told yourself everyone feels like this sometimes. You told yourself to push through, and you did. You showed up to conversations even when you didn't have much to give. You offered patience when yours was running low. You responded kindly while quietly counting how much energy it took. You became very good at appearing fine, even when fine felt like the last thing you were. What makes this kind of tiredness confusing is that it doesn't announce itself. There's no single breaking point, no obvious collapse. You still function. You still meet expectations. You still move through the world competently. But something inside you feels overextended. You don't feel dramatic enough to complain. You don't feel unwell enough to stop. So you keep going, telling yourself you'll rest later, when things calm down. But later keeps getting postponed, and the tiredness settles deeper, becoming part of how you exist. You might catch yourself zoning out more often, or feeling irritated by small things, or needing more quiet than you used to. These aren't flaws, they're signals. Signals that your emotional reserves have been drawn from for a long time without being replenished. You didn't lose your capacity to feel. You've been using it constantly, and constant use without recovery leads to depletion. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. If you're reading this and feeling a gentle ache of recognition, it's because many people live this way. They don't collapse, they endure. They carry on with less and less internal margin, assuming this is just the cost of being responsible, reliable, adult. This letter isn't here to tell you to stop caring. It's here to acknowledge the cost of caring continuously, to name the exhaustion you've been managing quietly, to let you know that feeling emotionally tired doesn't mean you're failing at life. It means you've been present for a long time. And presence, when it's constant, requires care. This kind of emotional fatigue didn't happen overnight. It built itself slowly through small decisions you made to keep things moving. Decisions to respond instead of pause, to accommodate instead of express, to stay composed instead of admitting you were reaching your limit. You didn't do this because you didn't know better. You did it because it worked. It kept relationships smooth. It kept situations stable. It helped you avoid conflict, disappointment, and misunderstanding. You learned that managing your emotions made life easier, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Over time, management became habit. You learned to anticipate what others needed, to adjust your tone, to soften your reactions. to stay emotionally available even when you were already stretched thin. You told yourself this was empathy, and it was. But empathy without boundaries becomes exhaustion. You may have noticed that you rarely let yourself fully feel things anymore. When sadness appears, you minimize it. When frustration rises, you swallow it. When joy arrives, it passes quickly because you're already preparing for what comes next. This isn't because you don't value your emotions. It's because you've learned to prioritize functionality. Functionality keeps things running, but it doesn't nourish you. It asks you to be steady, consistent, dependable, often at the expense of your inner experience. And when you live this way for long enough, your emotional world grows quiet, not because it's empty, but because it's tired of being managed. Another layer of this fatigue comes from responsibility. You've been carrying not just your own feelings, but the weight of being okay for others. Even when no one explicitly asked you to, you sensed the expectation. You felt the role you occupied, and you stayed in it. You became the one who didn't need much, the one who could handle it, the one who stayed strong, and strength when it's constant doesn't look heroic from the inside. It looks like suppression. It looks like delay. It looks like telling yourself you'll deal with your feelings later, once everything else is taken care of. But everything else never fully gets taken care of. So your emotions wait. They don't disappear. They accumulate quietly, showing up as fatigue, numbness, or detachment. You might wonder why you feel disconnected, why things don't move you the way they used to. It's not because you've lost depth. It's because depth needs space. Understanding this doesn't require blame. You adapted in ways that helped you survive and function. But survival strategies are not meant to define your entire emotional life. And when they do, they ask to be re-examined. Your tiredness isn't a failure. It's feedback. Feedback that something inside you needs rest, not restraint. You don't need to become a different person to recover from this tiredness. You don't need to stop caring, stop helping, or stop showing up. What you need is permission. Permission to feel without immediately managing the feeling. You are allowed to pause emotionally. You are allowed to acknowledge when something is heavy. These aren't signs of weakness. They are acts of self-respect. Recovery from emotional fatigue doesn't come from grand changes. It comes from small shifts in how you treat yourself, from noticing when you're pushing out of habit instead of intention, from choosing honesty over automatic composure. Even in quiet ways, you can start by letting yourself feel one thing at a time, without analysis, without judgment, without turning it into something that needs to be fixed, just letting it exist. That alone creates relief. You might worry that if you stop managing everything, things will fall apart. But most of the time, they don't. The world adjusts, people adapt, and you begin to reclaim small pockets of energy you didn't realize you were giving away. You don't have to carry everything emotionally. You don't have to be available all the time. You don't have to earn rest by being exhausted first. Emotional presence is not infinite. It requires replenishment. And replenishment begins when you stop treating your feelings as obstacles and start treating them as information. As you allow yourself more internal space, you may notice that color returns slowly, not as intensity, but as subtle engagement, as moments that feel real again, as reactions that come from authenticity instead of obligation. This isn't a quick process, and that's okay. Some days you'll still feel drained. Some days you'll slip back into old patterns. That doesn't erase your progress. It simply reminds you how deeply ingrained those patterns were. Each time you choose gentleness over endurance, you shift something. You are not broken for feeling this way. You are not failing at being strong. You are learning how to be sustainable. Stay here for a moment. Breathe. Let the weight ease slightly. You don't need to be fully restored tonight. You only need to stop demanding more of yourself than you can give. Emotional tiredness is not the end of your capacity. It's the beginning of listening, and listening, when done kindly, leads you back to yourself. Sincerely, you.